All right, man. Well, kia ora koutou, all beaming to you live down here in New Zealand. It's 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. So yeah, already seen a few good sessions in Spark Camp Saturday. So this is my little contribution. So I was part of Sydney 19, and there's a link in the chat with this short slideshow, and there's just a couple of links to some resources. Yeah, so we're now at the end of our school year here in New Zealand, and we were building into exams. For some reason, we still hold on to end of year exams, and just wanting to create a tool that would help students plan or prepare for their end of year exams. And I saw this great little video from Brenny Kama on developing a habit tracker, and I played around with a few of those ideas. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate this morning. So let's have a quick look in it. So I've put in the first tab here. It's just a link to a video, and this is one I created for my students about how they would fill it out. You may notice that there's also another video in here, and that's a bit of a deeper dive into how it actually works, and we'll go through some of those things this morning. So if we get to well, maybe the first way, the way it's organized, we've got three tabs. We've got an ACE dashboard, we've got a habit tracker, and then we've got the weekly planner. And I guess this is the one that I had started with. I've been using this for a number of years in my teaching, but I wanted to add on these other functionalities and headed down a bit of a rabbit hole into some extra features of Google Sheets that I wasn't so familiar with. So if we look at this dashboard, this idea of setting some goals, but figuring out where the students are first. So we took this, our school's pushing to ACE it. So ACE stands for attendance, completion, and effort. And so in this part, the students will fill in, just their attendance. They'll get that from their student information system. Maybe they were 85%. The completion, now I wanted the students to use some data for this. So I directed them to Google Classroom. So there's an example of a classroom that I'm a student of. And when they go to their classwork tab and view your work, and assuming you as a teacher have marked some work, they'll have this overall percentage up in here. And I just suggested, well, that would be a good one to use. You can see here, I don't have a percentage because none of these two tasks were marked. So that was an easy way to get that percentage. And let's say maybe I've done only 70% of the tasks. And then this last one was a bit of a self-assessment on effort. And maybe I'm being a little bit below par. Maybe I've only put in 63% effort. And you can see that the gauges will move. And this idea of, moving the needle, trying to improve on. So as we go down to the second part, this idea of moving the needle and what are your targets? Well, maybe if I was 85% attendance, I want to get to 95. I want to complete 100% of my tasks. And maybe my effort needs to be a bit closer to 90. So that's what the student does. Now, how does the gauge chart work? Well, if we look to, and that's just, inserting a chart. It's one of the many chart options that you can use. So if we just look at the edit chart, and sorry, as I was saying, it's one of the many types of charts that you can use. You can see there that I've selected the data range, so it's pulling the name of the metric and then also the value from those cells there. But the more interesting thing is about how we customize it. So if we go to chart style, we can change the background color and we can change the border and the font and those more stock standard things, but it gets a little more interesting about the gauge. Okay, so for this chart here, the values are from 0 to 1 because it's a percentage, not 100. And you can see that updates there to 100%, not 1000%. And then we can give the range colors. And by default, it's got 3 colors. So let's say for red, it's from 0 to 0.5. And you can see there that it highlights that part of the gauge in that color. Orange is maybe from 0.5 to 0.8. Updates that in orange. And then the last one, 0.8, all the way up to 1. So you obviously can customize these colors, choose from the normal palette, or add your own. So there we go. They've got a bit of an idea about where they are heading. The next tab across is the habit tracker. And so, in order to achieve those goals, we've got to talk about, well, you've got to get into some habits. Habits are hard to get into, but they're also hard to get out of. And I show my students this video of General or Admiral McRaven. He's got this famous little speech about, making your bed in the morning. And you win the day by doing that simple little task. You're off to a good start. You can complete so many more things. And great little feature here of Google Sheets. You can play that here within the sheet. You don't need to go outside to YouTube. So I give them a start of these different habits that they can make. And obviously they're totally customizable. So maybe they want to do a bit more than 30 minutes of study. Maybe it's 45 minutes study. Maybe they want to do a bit more exercise. They can change these or edit them as they like. So that's step one. And I've tried to put all the instructions here that's easy for students to follow. The next thing they do is they enter in these green cells here the number of times per week they want to do that habit. So make the bed should be 5 times a week. Studying, maybe they only want to do 2 lots of study a week. Maybe the dishes, they want to do it every day of the week. Show some gratitude. Maybe they're not that grateful, maybe twice a week. So they can adjust those reps. And then the last thing that they do as they complete each habit, and I'd usually go back to this document on a Friday and just ask the students, right, well, fill this in. How did you go this week? And they might go, well, actually, yep, every day I made my bed. And as you can see, as I tick those check boxes off, we've got this progress bar. The gauge chart goes up on an overall progress. And then this here changes to, yep, that one's complete. And so as they go through, we've got all that functionality of these spark lines, the conditional formatting. And if they were to go over, we can see here this is 3 lots of 20 minutes of exercise. They go to 4 times. Well, they've smashed it. They've done more than 100% of their goals. So with these overall, you might see that if it's below, in this case, 80%, we've just got this thinking emoji. But once they go past the 80%, we've got the hand claps. And if they just keep smashing out their goals or their habits, then eventually they're going to get to over 100% and they get some wonderful confetti. So just a visual way with the gauge chart, the confetti, the changing an emoji, the spark line, and this conditional formatting to try and encourage a bit of motivation. And this table just down the bottom there, we had 4 weeks leading into our exam, so I just encourage them, well, look, at the end of each week, just type in your overall percentage so you can track that as we go through. Well, let's take a look under the hood and how I set this up. So these parts here, the check boxes, are fairly straightforward. Just go to the insert menu and you can insert a tick box, and that either gives the cell a value of true or false. Yep, true or false. And then if we go to the spark line, so I've got the spark line function, and there's a couple of things in here. Just a normal spark line, I can make a few different types of spark lines. In this case, it's a bar chart. The maximum is going to be whatever is in cell B5. So in this case, it's going to be out of 5. If they get 5 out of 5, that's 100%. And then I can change the green. Yep. So to get that percentage, it's going to count the number of times that cells C5 to G5 are true. In this case, 5 of those are true. It's out of 5 reps a week. It's 5 out of 5. So by combining a count if into a sparkline formula, we end up with that functionality. On to the next one. Probably didn't need to do this, but got carried away. So this is an embedded if. So we've got an if function, but another if function within an if function. So it's an embedded if. And again, sort of a similar way to get that, that percentage. So it's going to count those cells from C5 to G5, whether they're true. And if they do equal the goal set, so equals B5, it's going to say yeah. If it's greater than B5, it's going to say smashed it. And if it's anything else, it's going to say not yet. So because I've got 3 options, I need to have an if within an if. So it's an embedded if statement. And then the last thing that I've done to this cell, you might see that it's changed color. Well, that is conditional formatting. Okay, so if I open up that conditional formatting, so if in this cell the text starts with N, so N for not yet, it's going to be yellow background and italics. So you can be very specific with how you customize the format. So there's the background. Maybe I want to make it a red color. I don't know. Yeah. So that's easy to customize. If it begins with Y for yeah, it's green. And if it begins with an S for smashed it, then it's going to be bold text as well. And then I got all into my gauge charts. So I thought, oh, might as well whack a gauge chart on this as well. And what I did is where this is pulling data from, this chart is actually in front of the cells that it's pulling data from. So if I go from A1 into cell B2, we can see I've got the name of the chart, which is progress, and then the formula. So this is a count. If it's counting up all the times these check boxes have been checked, okay, so it counts the number of those times it's true, and it divides it by the sum of B5 to B9, so that the number of reps per week or goals per week. So if it's, you set an overall 15 times over the 5 habits, and this was 15, 100%, and it just updates the gauge there. And as I've shown you before, you can obviously customize that gauge chart. You can see which cell it's pulling data from and go into customize and change the colors of the around the outside of the gauge. And then the last part, obviously also getting carried away, whacked in some emojis, and that is again another embedded if function. So if we look at the top here, so it's saying if what's in cell B2. Now remember, in B2, that's behind this graph, that's the overall percentage. So if it's less than 0.8, so if it's less than 80%, we've inserted this emoji, the thinking emoji. And then because we want 3 options, we've got to insert another if statement. So this is this one here. So if B2 is greater than 1, if it's greater than 100%, give some confetti. And then if it's anything else, so if it's not, if it's between 80% and 100%, then we're going to clap some hands. And because they were emojis, I needed to make the text in the cell really big. So you can see that the size of the text there, I've bumped it up to 100, so that gets nice and big. Now, the tricky thing with students using this part, if they want to make any adjustments, like I had a student who said, oh, actually, I want to keep going on my habits on Saturday and Sunday. So they inserted another column and they put Saturday, and then they worked out that they could insert some checkboxes, but obviously the formulas don't necessarily all update. Same with if they wanted to add more goals and habits. So there's probably a better way of doing those formulas and functions to account for that customization, but most of my students just left it with those 5 goals and 5 habits. And then the last thing, the last piece of the process was about, okay, so if we've got our goals, we're trying to move our needle. We know to move the needle, we want to develop some habits and then track them. Let's plan our week out. And this is just, real basic use of Google Sheets for its table function. And we said, well, look, we've got 5 days during the week where we go to school between 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. That's pretty much taken care of. You've also got your weekend. And this idea of, first of all, add your weekly routines. So let's say the student always gets up and makes their bed at around 7 o'clock. Get up and make bed, because we always got to make their bed to get the day off to a good start. And just this idea of, well, rather than having to type that again in here, you can actually merge those cells. So you obviously get up every day of the school week at 7. So using the merge cells, and then maybe making it even a little bit prettier and giving it a bit of a background color. So every day they get up and make their bed, maybe dinner time is 7 o'clock. So as they build up their weekly schedule, the idea is that hopefully they will see that there are a number of times in their week that they do have the ability to do some study, do some preparation, for their exams. I teach in an all-boys school, and one of the issues is boys go, well, I've got no time, I'm so busy. So this idea of building in their weekly schedule, so let's say maybe they play sport this time here, and they'll soon find that actually they do have a bunch of time where they could slot in the occasional study session. And then I just gave them this chart down here to say, well, look, we've got 4 weeks till the exams. Be a bit specific. Put down a topic in each of those 4 main subject areas that you want to work on. And obviously, being a Google Doc, I've been able to put in a link, and they can preview that here. So there's an example of a completed weekly planner. Yeah, so I ran with that the first time this year, and yeah, found this one was really useful. And I'll often ask each day, right, morning boys, who's made their bed this morning? Oh, well done, you've got off to a good win. Let's keep track of all those other habits. That's almost me. I'll just draw your attention to one thing. So I've put in the resource link or the resource page. It's linked to this post from Alice Keeler. And she, big on data and kids tracking data and using Schoollytics. So I've just started to use Schoollytics as a way to dive a bit deeper into data that we get from Google Classroom. And it's really, really good. I've been really enjoying it. And she's got a nifty idea of gamifying learning using the data that we most all usually put into Google Classroom, and this idea of total points. So yeah, I'm certainly going to have a look at that, but I thought that was a really interesting take on how to use Schoollytics, how to gamify learning for students to help them get motivated to do their best. There we go. That's me done for Sunday morning here in New Zealand. There's a couple more minutes. Happy to take any questions or comments in the last 2 minutes that we have here before we all leave and go into the next session. And there we go. Andy's just posted up the next session.
Andrew, thank you very much. Obviously, there might be some comments coming in, but I'll stop the recording in case any questions come in.